What would you do if the world laughed while someone's dignity was torn apart? Would you look away or step forward? The question hung in the heavy afternoon air of the marketplace, though no one had spoken it aloud. It was as if the sweltering city itself demanded an answer. Daniel adjusted the worn cap on his head, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. The scent of roasted corn and diesel smoke clung to every corner of the crowded square. Vendors called out prices in tired voices. Children darted between stalls, chasing ragged soccer balls. He arranged the last of his handmade bracelets on the cracked wooden table. The tiny beads, blue, red, and a single thread of gold, caught a glimmer of sunlight. They were more than ornaments. They were hours of quiet work after long nights, each one carrying a promise: food for tomorrow, rent for the end of the week. "Dad, can I hold the blue one?" his son Lucas asked, eyes bright with innocent wonder. He was 6, all knees and elbows, with a cowlick that never behaved. "Careful, my boy," Daniel whispered, his voice calm despite the heat. "We have to sell it, remember?" Lucas nodded, though his little fingers lingered over the bracelet as if it held the ocean. Across the street, a black luxury car purred to a stop. Its windows reflected the blazing sun like dark mirrors. The driver stepped out first, tall, precise, movements exact as clockwork. Then the passenger door opened, and Jonathan Hale emerged. People recognized him instantly. His name was on half the city's billboards. Real estate tycoon, philanthropist, man who built towers of glass where old neighborhoods once stood. His presence drew stares the way lightning draws the eye. Bright, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Daniel barely noticed. His world was the price of thread and the weight of coins in a paper cup. His focus was Lucas, the bracelets, the little life depending on him. Jonathan, however, noticed him. He had been on his way to a meeting when his gaze caught a flicker of color, the bracelets glinting like tiny embers against the gray. He slowed without understanding why. A sudden commotion broke his thoughts. A group of well-dressed shoppers approached Daniel's stand. Their perfume announced them before their heels clicked on the pavement. The tallest woman lifted a bracelet with a manicured finger. "This," she said, her voice carrying disdain. "It looks like something my maid would throw away." Her friends laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that cut through the marketplace noise. Daniel's cheeks burned. He forced a polite smile. "They are handmade, Senora. Each one—" "Handmade," the woman interrupted, smirking. "With what? Trash?" Another ripple of laughter. Lucas shrank behind his father's leg. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He remained across the street, hidden behind the flow of pedestrians. But every cruel word struck him like a pebble against glass. "If you were in his place," a quiet voice inside him asked, "would you endure or walk away?" The tall woman tossed the bracelet back onto the table. The beads scattered, one rolling off the edge and clinking onto the stones. "Oh, no," she said, pretending shock. "I dropped it. But surely you don't mind, since it's worthless." Daniel crouched quickly, heart hammering. His fingers found the bead, blue like a piece of sky. "Please," he said softly, "be careful. These are not worthless. They feed my son." The woman tilted her head as if considering a curious insect. Then she pulled a few coins from her purse, far less than the price marked on the small cardboard sign. She flung them onto the table so that they scattered like insult. "Take it," she said. "That's all it's worth." The coins rolled, ringing against the wood. Lucas gasped, eyes wide with confusion. "Dad!" Daniel laid a trembling hand on his shoulder. "It's all right, Philo," he whispered, though his throat burned with unshed tears. Jonathan's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had witnessed many negotiations, many power plays. But this was cruelty for sport. His driver leaned toward him. "Sir, we're late. The board is waiting." Jonathan barely heard. He watched the small boy clutch his father's leg as strangers mocked him. Something inside him, long, silent, stirred like an awakening storm. The tall woman smiled triumphantly, turning to leave. Her friends followed, their laughter fading into the crowd. Daniel gathered the coins. They were cold and sharp against his skin, heavy not with value, but with humiliation. Lucas tugged his sleeve. "Dad, don't cry. Your bracelets are beautiful. I like the blue one best." Daniel bit his lip, his vision blurring. "Obrigado, meu filho. That means more than all their money." Jonathan stepped off the curb. One stride, then another, his polished shoes clicking against the uneven stones. The marketplace seemed to hold its breath. Daniel straightened, startled by the tall man approaching. His expression was unreadable. Lucas stared, curiosity flickering like a candle. Jonathan stopped before the small table. He looked at the scattered bracelets, then at Daniel's tear-streaked face. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. He reached out and picked up the very bracelet the woman had mocked. The tiny beads caught the sun, sending a streak of light across his palm. He turned it gently, as though it were made of glass. Daniel swallowed, unsure whether to thank him or brace for another insult. Jonathan raised his eyes. They were a grey so clear it startled him, like rain just before a storm. The driver called from the car. "Sir, we really must—" Jonathan lifted a single finger for silence without looking away. His voice, when it came, was low but carried through the hush of the crowd. "I'll take them all." Gasps rippled through the nearby vendors. Daniel blinked. All of them?" Jonathan nodded once. "Every bracelet." He set the blue bracelet back on the table and reached into his jacket. Lucas's eyes widened as Jonathan pulled out a sleek black wallet. But before he could speak again, a sharp shout rose from the edge of the market. "Stop! That man! He stole my wallet!" Every head turned. A man pushed through the crowd, waving a small leather billfold. His eyes burned with accusation as he pointed directly at Daniel. Jonathan froze, the wallet still in his hand. The marketplace erupted in murmurs and gasps. Daniel's heart dropped like a stone. Lucas gripped his father's hand, fear flooding his small face. Jonathan's gaze snapped to the stranger, then back to Daniel. And in that suspended second, as tension crackled like an oncoming storm, no one dared breathe. The accuser stepped closer, his voice rising. "You took it! I saw you!" The city's afternoon sun beat down on Main Street, turning the asphalt into a shimmering ribbon of heat. The marketplace buzzed with life, vendors hawking their goods, the clatter of carts over uneven pavement, the scent of roasted nuts and hot dogs mixing with the exhaust of passing cars. For most, it was just another day. But for Daniel, every moment was survival. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and arranged his handmade bracelets one last time. Each one was unique, tiny beads threaded with care and precision, and each carried hours of work after his son, Lucas, had fallen asleep. The bracelets weren't just jewelry, they were hope. They were the difference between a warm meal or an empty fridge. Lucas, small and earnest, tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Dad, can I hold the blue one?" Daniel forced a tired smile. "Careful, buddy. That one's special. Remember, we need to sell it first." Lucas nodded, though he couldn't hide the curiosity and pride in his wide eyes. Across the street, the city seemed to move in slow motion for a moment. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop. Its paint gleamed, reflecting the sun in perfect, harsh lines. Out stepped a tall man in a designer suit, shoes clicking sharply against the pavement. Jonathan Hale, billionaire, mogul, the kind of man who could buy a building before breakfast and change the skyline with a handshake. His presence demanded attention. Daniel didn't notice. He had no time for billionaires. His world was measured in coins, in minutes before Lucas got hungry, in the weight of the day pressing on his shoulders. Yet Jonathan noticed him. The small burst of color, the bracelet sparkling in the sun, caught his eye. It was like a flicker of humanity amid the grey of the city streets. Suddenly, laughter cut through the marketplace. A group of well-dressed shoppers approached Daniel's table. One woman, tall and polished, picked up a bracelet and held it between perfectly manicured fingers. "This?" she said, voice dripping with disdain. "Looks like something my kid could make in art class." Her friends laughed. The sound was sharp, cruel. Daniel's face flushed. "They are handmade, ma'am, each one." "Handmade?" she interrupted, smirking. "With what? Bottle caps?" Another laugh. Lucas hid behind his father, wide-eyed and scared. Jonathan's jaw tightened across the street. He stayed back, hidden in the flow of people. But the words stung him. He had dealt with cutthroat deals and ruthless competition. But this was cruelty for sport. If he were in Daniel's place, would he stand there silently or walk away humiliated? The woman tossed a bracelet onto the table. It rolled, clinking against the cracked wood. "Oh no, dropped it," she said, feigning innocence. "But no worries, it's barely worth anything anyway." Daniel's hands shook as he picked it up. "Please be careful. These aren't worthless. They feed my son." Lucas tugged again at his father's pant leg. "Dad, it's okay." Daniel swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. His son's words, soft and innocent, grounded him in the chaos. The woman pulled a few coins from her designer purse and flung them onto the table, far less than the price. They scattered like insults. "Take it, that's all it's worth." Lucas gasped. "Dad!" Daniel pressed a hand to his son's shoulder. "It's okay. It's okay, buddy." Jonathan took a step forward, one, then another. His polished shoes clicked with purpose against the uneven sidewalk. The marketplace seemed to freeze. Even the laughter of the cruel shoppers faltered, as if sensing a storm approaching. Daniel's heart raced. Who was this man, and why did he feel so different? The tall businessman stopped in front of Daniel's table. His eyes, grey and sharp, swept over the scattered bracelets, then settled on Daniel's tense face. The kind of eyes that see everything, the exhaustion, the pride, the fear, and the strength. For a moment, silence ruled the street. Jonathan picked up the blue bracelet the woman had mocked. The sunlight caught the beads, casting tiny specks of color across his palm. He examined it carefully, as if weighing more than its material worth. Daniel swallowed. Can I help you?" Jonathan's voice was low but carried through the hush. "I'll take them all." Gasps echoed through nearby vendors and passers-by. "All of them?" Daniel asked, incredulous. Jonathan nodded once. "Every single one. You're too talented to be overlooked." Daniel's hands trembled, but not from fear. This was hope, sharp and sudden, piercing the gloom. Lucas's eyes widened. "Really, Dad?" "Yes, buddy," Daniel whispered, unable to hide the relief in his voice. But before Jonathan could reach for his wallet, a shout cut across the street. "Hey, that guy, he took my wallet!" Every head turned. A man pushed through the crowd, waving a leather billfold. His eyes blazed with accusation, and he pointed directly at Daniel. Daniel froze. His stomach sank. Lucas's hand clutched his tightly. Jonathan's gaze snapped from the accuser to Daniel, then back again. The air seemed to hum with tension. Daniel tried to speak. I didn't." The crowd began murmuring. Some faces twisted with judgment, others with curiosity. A few turned suspicious eyes on Daniel, who stood frozen, bracelets on the table, fear pressing against him like water. Jonathan's hand hovered over the wallet in his pocket, ready to intervene, but the moment felt suspended in time. "Stop! I saw him take it!" the accuser shouted, stepping closer. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. His mind raced. "This can't be happening. Not now." Lucas's small voice trembled. "Dad, please." Daniel looked down at his son. The fear in Lucas's eyes mirrored his own. Jonathan finally moved, stepping between Daniel and the angry man. He kept his voice calm, authoritative. "Sir, calm down. Let's figure this out before anyone jumps to conclusions." The crowd held its breath. Vendors froze. Shoppers whispered. Even the summer wind seemed to pause. And in that frozen moment, with tension thick enough to choke on, Daniel realized this was bigger than a bracelet. This was about respect, dignity, and survival. And yet, the worst was still coming. The accuser leaned in, voice sharp and accusatory. "I don't care what he says. He stole my wallet, and I'll make sure he pays." The marketplace had gone from bustling to tense in the blink of an eye. Vendors paused mid-call, children stopped chasing soccer balls, and shoppers whispered behind their hands. Daniel's hands shook as the man accusing him of theft stepped closer. His pulse raced, every nerve screaming that the situation could spiral out of control. "I'm telling you, he took it!" the man shouted again, waving the leather wallet like a banner of evidence. "I saw him! Don't even try to deny it!" Daniel took a shaky step back, instinctively pulling Lucas closer to his side. "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not mine," he said, his voice calm but strained. "I haven't touched your wallet." The man's face twisted with anger. "Don't lie to me. I saw you reach into my bag." "Everybody saw it." Jonathan Hale stepped forward, cutting between the two men with an air of authority that silenced the surrounding crowd. "Let's calm down," he said, voice low but commanding. "We're going to figure this out, but you need to stop yelling." The accuser glared at Jonathan, but didn't back down. "And who are you? The rich guy who buys your little toys?" he sneered at Daniel. "Think you can protect him?" Daniel's stomach sank. The accusation wasn't just loud. It was public. Humiliation washed over him in waves. Every eye in the marketplace seemed to judge him. Every whispered word, every pointed stare felt like a punch. He had worked tirelessly to feed his son, to keep his life together, and now it all seemed to crumble in a single moment. Lucas tugged at his pant leg, voice trembling. "Dad, what's happening?" Daniel bent down to his son, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's okay, buddy. Just stay calm. We'll fix this." Jonathan surveyed the scene. His gaze lingered on Daniel's bracelets, the small, colorful pieces of care and effort. He saw exhaustion etched into the vendor's face, the quiet dignity even under fire, and the fear in Lucas's eyes. Something inside him tightened, a mix of anger at the injustice and admiration for Daniel's restraint. "Sir," Jonathan said, addressing the accuser, "why don't you explain exactly what happened, calmly?" The man's voice rose again. "I was walking by and I saw him reach into my bag while I was distracted. He took my wallet." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. He could sense the exaggeration, the performance. Still, he remained neutral, his presence a shield around Daniel. "Okay," he said slowly. "Do you want to check his belongings?" The accuser hesitated, then waved the wallet. "It's right here." Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't stolen anything. Every instinct screamed that this confrontation could escalate. He glanced at Lucas, who was clinging to his leg, eyes wide with fear. "Everyone just calm down," Daniel said, his voice stronger now, though his heart pounded. "I promise I haven't taken anything. You can look all you want." The man scoffed, glaring at him. "Sure, it's easy to claim innocence when you think no one will check." A few onlookers began murmuring. Some nodded in agreement with the accuser. Others whispered their suspicion at Daniel. Public humiliation felt heavier than any physical weight. Jonathan placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you have anything in your bag or pockets?" he asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. "Nothing. Just my bracelets and Lucas's little bag. That's it." Jonathan turned back to the accuser. "Would you like me to personally inspect?" The man hesitated again, the defiance in his eyes faltering under Jonathan's unwavering gaze. He reluctantly agreed. Jonathan reached into Daniel's small canvas bag, lifting each bracelet, each thread-wrapped piece of jewelry. Nothing unusual, No wallet, no evidence of theft. The accuser's face flushed with embarrassment, but he refused to back down. Maybe it fell somewhere, he muttered, clearly unsure now. Daniel exhaled slowly, relief barely touching the edges of his panic. He looked down at Lucas. "See, buddy? Nothing to worry about." Lucas nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. Jonathan's gaze didn't leave the accuser. "It's easy to make assumptions," he said firmly, "but accusing someone publicly without proof, that can destroy a person's life in seconds." The man muttered something under his breath but didn't argue further. A few nearby vendors began murmuring about fairness, about shame, about watching where they cast judgment. Then something Daniel hadn't expected happened. The woman who had mocked his bracelets earlier stepped forward, her high heels clicking against the pavement. "Wait," she said, a smug smile crossing her face. "If he didn't steal your wallet, maybe your little accusation was wrong." Daniel wanted to shrink into himself. The laughter from before had returned, but now it was tinged with skepticism. Public humiliation had a long memory, and many eyes still doubted him. Jonathan didn't flinch. He turned to Daniel. "Do you want to tell them who you are?" Daniel shook his head, embarrassed. "No, that doesn't matter." "It matters to them," Jonathan said. "Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken aloud." Before Daniel could respond, a voice rang out from the crowd. "Hey, I know that guy!" All eyes turned to see a middle-aged man pushing through the throng. "He's the one who helped me last week, saved my cart from tipping over in the storm. You guys have it all wrong." A murmur of acknowledgement ran through the crowd. Slowly, some faces softened, realizing that Daniel might not be what they assumed. The accuser's face turned red. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped as more witnesses began speaking up in Daniel's defense. Jonathan placed a hand gently on Daniel's shoulder again. "See, sometimes the world isn't as cruel as it seems, but don't let fear or humiliation make you doubt yourself." Daniel felt a surge of gratitude, but also a knot of tension. The humiliation hadn't fully passed. Many eyes were still wary, and Lucas was still trembling. Then, a sudden shout from the edge of the crowd broke the moment. "Stop right there!" a police officer's voice commanded, and several uniformed officers appeared, pushing through the throng. Daniel froze. His heart sank. The marketplace, the crowd, the tension. It all came crashing down in an instant. Jonathan's hand tightened slightly on his shoulder. "Stay calm," he said, his voice steady. "Let's see what this is about." Lucas clung tighter to his father, whispering, "Dad, are we in trouble?" Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know. The first public humiliation had nearly crushed him, but now something else was coming. Something he couldn't yet see and he couldn't yet prepare for. As the officers approached, one pointed directly at Daniel. "Sir, we need you to come with us. There's been a report of theft." "What are we going to do, Dad?" Lucas whispered, voice small and shaky. The city's sounds, honking cars, barking dogs, chatter from nearby vendors, felt distant to him, muffled by the panic he saw in his father's eyes. Daniel knelt beside his son on the cracked sidewalk, brushing a strand of hair from Lucas's forehead. "We're going to be okay, buddy," he said softly, forcing calm into his own voice. "We just have to stay strong." Lucas glanced at the scattered bracelets on the table. The sunlight caught the tiny beads, making them sparkle like miniature stars. I want everyone to see that they're pretty," he said, voice quivering. "I don't want people to be mean to you." Daniel felt a pang of guilt. He had spent so many nights trying to provide for his son that he sometimes forgot to protect him from the cruelty of the world. Now, standing in the middle of the marketplace, he realized Lucas had seen it all. He had witnessed the mockery, the accusations, the humiliation. Jonathan Hale, still nearby but giving them a respectful distance, observed quietly. There was something raw and honest in the way Daniel interacted with his son. no pretense, no arrogance, just a man protecting the person he loved most. It was a side of humanity that money could never buy, a side Jonathan rarely saw in his own circle of power. "Lucas," Daniel said, lowering himself so he could look into his son's wide eyes. "Remember how we always help people even when it's hard?" Lucas nodded slowly. "Yeah, like the lady last week who dropped her groceries." "Exactly," Daniel replied. "And we're going to keep doing that because that's who we are. And no one can take that away from us." Lucas's small hand found his father's, squeezing it tightly. "Promise?" "I promise," Daniel said, feeling a surge of pride and protectiveness. The marketplace buzzed around them, but a strange calm seemed to settle over the little space they occupied. The crowd's murmurs softened as people began to notice the connection between father and son. Daniel's humility, his quiet strength, seemed to contrast sharply with the arrogance and judgment that had just swept through the market. Jonathan stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Daniel could hear. "You're handling this well," he said. "Most people would have lost it by now." Daniel shrugged, though his hands were still trembling slightly. "You don't have a choice when you're responsible for someone else. You have to stay strong." Jonathan nodded, impressed. There was a resilience here that money couldn't buy, a dignity that no amount of public humiliation could strip away. Lucas's eyes flicked up to Jonathan, curious and unafraid. "Mister, are you going to help Dad?" he asked, innocently. Jonathan hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I'm trying, buddy. I promise." The boy's trust, simple and unquestioning, struck something deep inside Jonathan. It reminded him of a lesson he often forgot in his own life. Power doesn't make you respected. Compassion does. Daniel adjusted the bracelets, picking them up carefully. "Okay, Lucas, let's do something," he said. "We're going to show people that what we do matters, that we're not just some target for their insults." Lucas nodded, his small hands helping to arrange the bracelets neatly again. "We'll show them?" "Yes," Daniel said, meeting his son's eyes. "We'll show them exactly who we are." Just as they began to rebuild their little table display, a commotion rose from the edge of the marketplace. A group of teenagers, laughing and pointing, had gathered near the accuser from earlier. "You're still here?" one of them jeered. "Thought you'd be gone after embarrassing him." Daniel's heart sank, but he didn't let himself lose composure. Lucas squeezed his hand tightly, seeking reassurance. Jonathan's presence by the table helped, but it was clear that Daniel would need more than protection from one wealthy man to face the growing hostility. He looked around at the crowd, noticing subtle shifts. Some people were beginning to whisper in Daniel's favor, others still watching, waiting for the next misstep. Lucas leaned into him. "Dad, I don't like this part. People are mean." Daniel knelt down, holding his son's face gently. "I know, buddy, but sometimes we have to face it to prove our worth, and I can't do it without you." The boy's eyes widened, a mix of fear and admiration. "We do it together." "Together," Daniel affirmed. The teenagers moved closer, but before they could say anything further, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was older, her face lined with years of experience, but her eyes were sharp. "Leave him alone," she said firmly. "He hasn't done anything to hurt anyone." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond to this sudden intervention. Jonathan glanced at Daniel. "See, not everyone's against you. Sometimes courage draws support." Daniel nodded, swallowing the lump of tension in his throat. He could feel Lucas leaning against him, small but steadfast. His son's trust, pure and unshakable, reminded him of why he fought so hard. Suddenly, the accuser's voice rang out again. "This isn't over! He's guilty!" Daniel took a deep breath, gripping Lucas's hand tightly. He knew he couldn't control every accusation, every judgment, but he could control his response. "Sir, Daniel said, voice calm but firm. "I've done nothing wrong, and I'm not afraid to stand here with my son while you spread lies." Lucas looked up at him, eyes shining. "That's right, Dad. You're brave." Daniel felt a swell of pride, tempered by fear. The marketplace had seen his humiliation. Now it was witnessing his resilience. And more importantly, his son was learning the same lesson. Courage and dignity matter more than the approval of strangers, Jonathan observed quietly, noting the father-son bond. He realized that this small act, standing firm, protecting his child, refusing to bow to public humiliation, was more valuable than any business deal or corporate success. As Daniel and Lucas readied themselves for whatever came next, a sudden commotion erupted near the back of the crowd. A woman screamed, a loud, panicked cry that drew everyone's attention. People turned, jostling to see what had happened. Daniel instinctively moved Lucas behind him, shielding his son. His heart raced. Something urgent, dangerous, and unexpected was happening. Jonathan stepped closer to Daniel, his protective instincts kicking in. "Stay calm," he murmured. "Let's see what's going on before anyone panics." But even as he spoke, Daniel realized that no amount of planning or courage could prepare them for the next moment. From the crowd's edge, a small figure emerged, gasping and pointing directly at Daniel. "That man! He's not just a vendor. He's hiding something!" The marketplace had returned to its usual rhythm, but the tension lingered like a heavy fog. Daniel wiped his brow, trying to keep his hands steady as he rearranged the bracelets. Lucas perched on the edge of the table, watching every movement with wide, anxious eyes. "Dad, why are they looking at us like that?" Lucas asked softly, pointing toward a group of onlookers, whispering and pointing. Daniel forced a smile. "They're just curious, buddy. Nothing to worry about. Let's keep going." But Daniel knew better. Curiosity could turn into suspicion in a heartbeat. He could feel it in the sharp glances, the subtle shakes of heads, and the whispers that now seemed louder than the marketplace's chatter. Jonathan Hale stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd. He noticed the subtle shift too. Even after the earlier incident, some people weren't willing to let go of the story that Daniel had allegedly stolen a wallet. Rumors spread fast, and suspicion had a way of sticking to people like glue. "Dad, what if they think you really did it?" Lucas asked, his small voice trembling. Daniel knelt beside him, taking both of his son's hands in his. "Then we'll prove them wrong, Lucas. That's all we can do. Keep your head high, stay calm, and remember who we are." The boy nodded, but his eyes betrayed fear. A few vendors nearby leaned over, muttering under their breath. "I saw it." "Maybe he did take it," one said quietly. Another shook his head. "No way. He seemed honest when the guy picked up the bracelets." Daniel felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. Even when he did the right thing, people found a way to doubt him. Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out. "Hey, that vendor, come over here." Daniel looked up to see a tall man, dressed neatly but with a smirk that made Daniel's stomach twist, pointing directly at him. A small group of the marketplace's regular shoppers had gathered behind him, their expressions a mix of amusement and judgment. Daniel straightened, Lucas clutching his hand. "Yes? How can I help you?" The man stepped closer, glancing at Jonathan. "This is none of your business, rich guy, but I'm just making sure everyone knows. This man here is not to be trusted." Daniel blinked. "Sir, I haven't done anything wrong. You've got it all wrong." The man laughed, cruel and sharp. "Wrong? I don't think so. Someone like you, selling trinkets on the street, always trying to get something extra. Who knows what you're capable of?" Lucas's small hand squeezed Daniel's. "Dad." Daniel knelt beside him again. "Stay close to me, Lucas. Don't worry." Jonathan's presence was steady, but even he seemed surprised at the boldness of the accusation. He stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Sir, that's enough. You have no proof, and spreading false accusations publicly is not acceptable." The man smirked, undeterred. "Proof? Who needs proof when everyone can see his kind of character? I'm just warning people." Daniel's chest tightened. Each word felt like another layer of humiliation, each glance from the crowd another cut. Yet he refused to show weakness. He couldn't, not in front of Lucas, not in front of anyone. He straightened, holding his head high. "I understand that you're suspicious, but I have done nothing wrong, and I will not let your lies define me." Lucas looked up at him, eyes wide. "Dad, you're brave." Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. Brave didn't mean he wasn't afraid. Brave meant standing tall when everything inside screamed to run. The accuser leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Daniel could hear. "Don't think I'm done. People like you don't belong here. One wrong move, and everyone will believe me." Daniel's eyes flashed with quiet determination. "I'm not afraid of lies. I'll face them, and I'll prove the truth." Jonathan moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Let them say what they want. The truth will always come out, but you need to be smart, Daniel. Don't let anger cloud your judgment." Daniel nodded, swallowing the tightness in his throat. The market's normal buzz continued, but beneath it a tension simmered. People were watching, waiting, judging. Every word, every gesture, every move counted. Lucas leaned against him, whispering, "Dad, maybe we should just leave." Daniel shook his head. "No, Lucas, running won't help anyone. We face this together." The accuser scoffed, clearly frustrated that Daniel wasn't cowering. "You think standing there will protect you? Wait until someone finds something to pin on you. Then we'll see how brave you really are." Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew this wasn't just about bracelets anymore. This was about reputation, about survival, about proving that a man who worked hard every day, who loved his child, was not a criminal in anyone's eyes. A few nearby shoppers began murmuring, some defending Daniel quietly. "Leave him alone. He's been nothing but honest," one woman whispered. "You can see the way he cares for his son." The accuser's smirk faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly, glancing around. "We'll see how long that lasts. People like him, they always find trouble." Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the tension coil tighter in his chest. He looked down at Lucas, who was trembling slightly but standing firm. His son's trust, so absolute, was the anchor that kept him steady. Jonathan's voice cut through the murmurs. "Daniel, stay calm. Let's not let him bait us. Focus on what matters, the bracelets, the boy, the truth. Everything else will fall into place." Daniel nodded. He knew Jonathan was right. Letting anger or fear take control would only make things worse. He had to be careful, precise and calm, but then a sudden, sharp laugh rang out from the crowd. "Hey, did you see that?" a woman shouted, pointing directly at Daniel. "I think he's hiding something under the table." Gasps rippled through the marketplace. Eyes turned to Daniel's table, scanning for some unseen proof of wrongdoing. Lucas clung to his father, eyes wide. Daniel's heart froze. He had nothing to hide. Or so he thought, but even the smallest misunderstanding now could escalate beyond control. Jonathan stepped forward, voice low and controlled. "Everyone, back up. Let's calm down before someone gets hurt." The woman didn't listen, leaning closer, fingers pointing at the table. "I'm telling you, he's up to something. Look closely." Daniel swallowed hard, realizing the crowd's attention was shifting. Rumors, accusations and suspicion were like wildfire, and he was at the center. He looked down at Lucas, who was trembling but holding on, and felt a surge of determination. He couldn't fail, not now, not ever, when Lucas's trust depended on him. Suddenly, someone yanked at the edge of Daniel's table, sending bracelets scattering across the pavement. The crowd gasped, and Daniel froze, realizing that this simple act might change everything. The marketplace was in chaos. Bracelets lay scattered across the cracked pavement, their colors flashing like tiny sparks against the grey concrete. Daniel's stomach tightened as he knelt, scooping them up while keeping Lucas close. Every whispered accusation from the crowd still rang in his ears, each one a reminder of how quickly the world could turn against him. "Dad, what if they're right?" Lucas whispered, voice quivering. His small hand reached for Daniel's, holding on as if his life depended on it. Daniel took a deep breath, forcing his hands to stay steady. "Listen to me, Lucas. No one can tell us who we are. Only we know that, and I know who I am." The boy's eyes searched his father's face. "But what if they don't believe you?" Daniel smiled softly, brushing a bead of dust from Lucas's cheek. "Then we'll show them. Actions speak louder than words, remember?" A commotion at the edge of the crowd drew Daniel's attention. A cart had tipped over near a vendor's stall, spilling fruits and vegetables everywhere. People gasped and scrambled to help, but no one moved fast enough to prevent more from falling. Daniel's instincts kicked in. "Lucas, stay right here," he instructed, placing him behind the table for safety. Then, without hesitation, he dashed toward the cart. Jonathan watched in silence, impressed. Daniel's courage wasn't just in words, it showed in action. In a heartbeat, he was pulling crates upright, catching apples and oranges before they hit the ground. He worked with precision, despite the uneven pavement and the curious, judgmental eyes around him. "Hey, watch out!" someone shouted, but Daniel ignored them, focused on preventing more damage. One of the vendors, a heavy-set man in a stained apron, stumbled and dropped a basket. Daniel caught it mid-air, balancing it with one hand while securing the crates with the other. Lucas's small voice echoed in his head, reminding him why he couldn't fail. When the cart was finally stable, Daniel turned back, breathless, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked up to see Jonathan stepping forward, nodding in approval. "That was impressive," Jonathan said. "Most people would have panicked or just stood there." Daniel forced a small laugh, chest still tight. "Some lessons you learn when you have someone depending on you." Lucas ran to his side, eyes wide. "Dad, you're amazing!" Daniel ruffled his son's hair, heart swelling. "Thanks, buddy, but it's teamwork. You stayed calm. That helped too." The crowd's tone began to shift. Murmurs of admiration replaced whispers of suspicion. People who had doubted him now observed quietly, some nodding in approval. Then a new threat emerged. The accuser from before was approaching again, his smirk replaced with a scowl. "You think helping a cart makes you a hero?" he sneered. "We all know what you're really capable of." Daniel straightened, meeting the man's eyes. "I've done nothing wrong, and I'm not afraid of your lies." The man laughed, sharp and bitter. "Words are easy. We'll see what happens when you can't talk your way out of trouble." Before Daniel could respond, a sudden cry rang out. "Help! Somebody help!" A child had fallen into a shallow but fast-moving drainage channel behind the marketplace. Water surged, carrying leaves and debris. People froze, unsure how to react. Without thinking, Daniel dashed toward the channel. Lucas's cries followed him. "Dad, be careful!" Jonathan moved swiftly, trying to keep up. "Daniel, wait!" he shouted, but Daniel didn't stop. The current was stronger than it looked. Daniel's legs slipped as he reached for the child. He grabbed the small figure, holding the boy above the water. The child screamed, panicked and soaked. Daniel's muscles burned, but he kept a firm grip, hauling the child to safety. Nearby shoppers rushed to help, finally assisting in pulling both Daniel and the child out of the water. Lucas ran to his father, hugging him tightly. "You saved him. Dad, you're a hero." Daniel bent down, holding his son's face gently. "No, Lucas, we all helped. That's what matters, helping others when they need it most." Jonathan approached, impressed and visibly moved. "Daniel, that was incredible. You didn't hesitate, not even for a second. Most people would have watched from the sidelines." Daniel wiped his hands on his pants, chest heaving. "I didn't have a choice. That child didn't care about rumors or accusations. They just needed help. And that's what we do, right? Lucas nodded vigorously. Right. Help people. The crowd, now fully attentive, began clapping. Some vendors cheered. Even the accuser hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Daniel looked around, realizing the shift. His actions, small acts of courage and kindness, had spoken louder than the whispers, louder than the accusations. People were beginning to see him for who he really was. But Daniel knew the victory was temporary. Suspicion still lingered, especially from the accuser, and the marketplace could turn on him at any moment. He had to stay vigilant. Jonathan placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You've shown your strength, Daniel, but this isn't over. There will be more tests, more challenges. Are you ready for them? Daniel met his gaze. I have to be. For Lucas, for everyone who can't defend themselves. I can't stop now. Lucas tugged at his sleeve. Dad, what about the man? He still looks mad. Daniel followed his son's gaze. The accuser was fuming, muttering under his breath, clearly plotting his next move. Daniel clenched his fists, knowing that confrontation was far from finished. A woman in the crowd stepped forward, smiling at Daniel. You've got guts, mister. That's something rare these days. Daniel nodded politely, trying not to let the praise inflate his ego. He had done what he had to do. Heroism wasn't about recognition. It was about action when it mattered most. But then a sudden shout pierced the marketplace. Look, he's hiding something under the table again. Daniel's stomach dropped. People leaned in, eyes scanning the table for evidence, for proof that he was guilty of something. The bracelets lay neatly arranged, but the accusation, loud and public, threatened to undo everything he had just achieved. Jonathan's eyes narrowed, assessing the situation. Daniel, stay calm. Let's see what this is about. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he reached under the table. There was nothing there, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. But the crowd's anticipation was palpable, every gasp and murmur feeding the tension. Lucas clung to his father, whispering, Dad, what now? Daniel took a deep breath, meeting his son's eyes. Now, we show them the truth. We stay strong, no matter what comes next. As Daniel lifted his hands from under the table, a small, leather-bound notebook slipped out, landing in front of the crowd. Every eye turned toward it, and Daniel froze. He had no memory of placing it there. Daniel's hands froze mid-air as he stared at the small, leather-bound notebook lying on the cracked pavement. The marketplace had gone silent. Every whisper, every footstep, every gasp seemed to vanish into an invisible vacuum. Even Lucas, who had been clutching his father's sleeve moments ago, froze, his wide eyes fixed on the mysterious notebook. Jonathan Hale stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching against the pavement. Daniel, where did this come from? He asked, his voice calm but urgent. Daniel shook his head, confusion twisting his features. I don't know. I didn't put it there. I swear. A few people in the crowd murmured, leaning closer, their curiosity piqued. The accuser, the man who had been trying to tarnish Daniel's reputation all day, smirked maliciously. Aha! Looks like we finally caught something, didn't we? Daniel's chest tightened. His mind raced. He had nothing to hide, nothing at all. But the notebook's sudden appearance made him question everything. Who had planted it? And why now, after all he had done to prove himself in front of the crowd? Lucas tugged on his father's sleeve, whispering, Dad, is it bad? Daniel knelt down, trying to mask his fear with a steady voice. I don't know yet, Lucas, but we're going to find out together. He reached down and carefully picked up the notebook. The leather cover was worn, edges frayed, the kind of item that had been handled countless times. He opened it slowly, the pages slightly yellowed, the ink faded. As his eyes scanned the first lines, his breath caught. The notebook contained detailed records, names, amounts of money, transactions. Nothing illegal at first glance. But then Daniel's heart sank. Someone had meticulously recorded every sale he had ever made, every interaction, every delivery he had completed over the past year. "Daniel, what is it?" Jonathan asked, noticing the sudden pallor in his face. Daniel swallowed hard, turning a page. It's a record of my work. Every single sale, every client. It's someone's way of tracking me." The crowd murmured, a few people stepping back. The accuser's smirk widened. "See? He's hiding something. Maybe not a crime, but something suspicious." Daniel clenched his fists, gripping the notebook tightly. He had to remain calm. He had faced public humiliation, false accusations, and even threats. But this was different. Someone had deliberately set him up for scrutiny. Lucas's small hand touched his father's arm. "Dad, it's okay, right? You didn't do anything wrong." Daniel smiled, forcing himself to calm his racing heart. "No, buddy, nothing wrong. We're going to handle this like we always do, carefully and together." Jonathan leaned in, whispering, "Daniel, whoever did this is smart. They're trying to make you look guilty while hiding their own agenda." Daniel nodded. He knew Jonathan was right. This was no random act. This was calculated. Someone had been watching him, learning his routine, waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate him or create suspicion. He looked up at the crowd, meeting their eyes. Some were skeptical, some curious, and a few looked concerned. He needed to control the narrative before the accuser twisted the story further. "Everyone, listen," Daniel called out, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This notebook doesn't belong to me. I've never seen it before today. Someone is trying to make me look guilty. You can believe whatever you want, but I will not let lies define me." The accuser laughed, shaking his head. "Words are cheap. We'll see how long you can keep that story going." Suddenly, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "Wait a second. I know that handwriting," she said, pointing at the notebook. "It's the handwriting of the man who's been running the other jewelry stall across the street. He's been jealous of your success." Gasps rippled through the marketplace. The accuser's smirk faltered. Daniel's eyes widened. He had noticed that stall before, the way the other vendor would glance at him nervously whenever someone approached. But he never imagined. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. That explains the meticulous records, the timing. This was all about jealousy, not crime. Daniel felt a wave of relief, mixed with lingering tension. "So, someone was trying to frame me, make me look bad in front of everyone?" "Yes," the woman confirmed. "They've been trying to sabotage your business, make you look suspicious, and now they've set up this scene in the middle of the market." Lucas's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Dad, you're going to be okay." Daniel knelt, hugging his son tightly. "Yes, Lucas, we're going to be okay, and people will see the truth." The crowd's tone shifted again, now a mix of curiosity and indignation at the idea of someone framing Daniel. Murmurs turned into whispers, and a few shoppers began speaking out. "Yeah, that makes sense. He's been nothing but honest." The accuser, now looking embarrassed, stepped back, trying to regain control. "Well, maybe there's more to the story than I thought." Daniel remained calm, aware that victory was not yet secured. He had to make sure the evidence, the notebook, was handled correctly, that the truth reached everyone in the marketplace. Jonathan leaned close, voice low. "We need to expose the truth, Daniel. Publicly. Show everyone the notebook. Point out the handwriting and explain everything." Daniel nodded, formulating a plan in his mind. "You're right. We'll start by showing the notebook to everyone, explaining the handwriting, and confronting the person who's behind this. They can't hide anymore." Lucas tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can we do it now?" Daniel smiled down at him. Yes, Lucas. Let's make sure everyone sees the truth. Just as he was about to address the crowd, a loud, piercing shout rang out from the far side of the market. Stop! That's not all! The crowd turned, eyes wide with shock. Daniel froze, heart pounding. Someone else had entered the scene, someone holding another notebook, identical to the one Daniel held. The new figure stepped closer, face hidden beneath a hood. Everything you've seen so far is only the beginning, the voice called out, trembling with urgency. If you think this is shocking, wait until you see what's in the second notebook. Daniel's mind raced, his stomach churned. The marketplace went silent again, everyone staring, waiting, their collective breath held. Lucas's small voice trembled. Dad, what is it? Daniel bent down, looking into his son's eyes. I don't know, buddy, but whatever it is, it's going to change everything. The hooded figure lifted the second notebook, flipping it open to reveal a page that made Daniel gasp in horror. Written there, in familiar handwriting, were secrets about him, his past, and a truth he never expected anyone to know. Daniel's hands shook as he held the second notebook, its pages filled with secrets he never imagined anyone could know. The marketplace had gone utterly silent, everyone staring, waiting for an explanation. Even Lucas, normally so brave, clung tightly to his father's arm, fear written all over his small face. Daniel's stomach churned. He had survived public humiliation before. False accusations, spilled merchandise, cruel whispers. But this was different. This was personal. Someone had dug into his past and weaponized it against him, laying his private life bare for everyone to see. The hooded figure stepped forward, raising a hand dramatically. Do you all see? This man, Daniel Hayes, has been lying to you, hiding things that change everything. A gasp swept through the crowd. Eyes darted between Daniel and the notebook, suspicion and curiosity fighting for dominance. Lucas whispered, trembling, Dad, is it true? Daniel's throat tightened. No, it's not true, Lucas. None of it. But we're going to have to face it together. Jonathan Hale stepped closer, placing a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. Stay calm. Don't let them provoke you. We'll handle this, but you need to be strong for Lucas. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. He looked around at the crowd, seeing a mix of curiosity, judgment, and excitement. The marketplace that had once cheered him for saving that child now seemed ready to turn on him, the thrill of gossip hanging in the air like smoke. The hooded figure flipped the notebook open to a page and read aloud, voice cold and deliberate. Daniel Hayes, 5 years ago, was involved in a dispute over money with another vendor. There were rumors, people whispered, and now he's been hiding that truth from you all. Daniel's heart pounded. That dispute had been long resolved. It had been a minor disagreement, nothing criminal, nothing harmful, but hearing it framed as scandalous, spoken so publicly, made him feel naked in front of the crowd. A few people in the audience murmured, skepticism creeping in. I remember that fight, but didn't he fix it? One woman whispered. The hooded figure ignored them. And more. Here are notes about personal debts, mistakes, failures, everything Daniel Hayes never wanted you to know. He's not the man you think he is. Lucas began to cry, his small shoulders shaking. Dad, why would they do this? Daniel knelt, gathering him into his arms. Shh, it's okay, Lucas. I don't know why, but we'll get through this together. Always remember, the truth is on our side. The crowd's mood shifted dangerously. The accuser, emboldened, stepped forward. Finally, we see the real Daniel Hayes, a liar, a cheat, a man who's been hiding things from everyone. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to scream, to defend himself, but the sea of faces, the murmurs, the whispering, he felt trapped. Every word he spoke would be scrutinized, every move judged. He could feel the heat of embarrassment rising, a pressure he hadn't felt since his earliest days selling bracelets on the streets. Jonathan whispered urgently, "Daniel, don't argue, don't beg. Just show them the truth when the time is right. For now, stay composed." Daniel forced his body to obey, though inside his mind was racing. His reputation, his livelihood, and Lucas's trust were all under attack. The hooded figure had orchestrated a spectacle designed to break him. Then someone from the crowd shouted, "Look! He's hiding money under the table!" Daniel froze. Lucas gasped. The accusation was absurd, but the crowd began leaning in, scanning the table and the scattered bracelets. Murmurs of doubt spread like wildfire, uncertainty rippling through the onlookers. Daniel's stomach sank. He had done everything right, saved lives, remained honest. Yet here he was, being dragged to rock bottom by lies and jealousy. His throat ached, his hands trembled. Even Jonathan looked tense, realizing how delicate the situation had become. Lucas clung tighter, sobbing now. "Dad? Everyone thinks you're bad." Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat, forcing himself to kneel and take his son into his lap. "Listen to me, Lucas. None of this is true. People will see the truth. But right now, we stay calm. We stay together." A few spectators started whispering, some skeptical, some curious. "But what about the notebooks?" one asked. "They look real." Daniel shook his head. "They're trying to manipulate you, that's all. We'll show you what really happened." The hooded figure, sensing the crowd's wavering attention, raised their voice again. "Daniel Hayes, confess. Admit what you've been hiding." Daniel felt panic rising, a cold, suffocating wave threatening to overtake him, but he forced himself to breathe, to focus, to stay strong. His son's life, his dignity, everything depended on his ability to remain calm. Back. "Daniel, you can do this. One step at a time. Show them the truth. Don't let them control you." Daniel nodded, taking a deep breath. He looked around the crowd, noticing faces of doubt, fear, and some, just a few, faces of trust. They were his anchor. He couldn't fail. Then a sudden movement near the back caught everyone's attention. The hooded figure's hand trembled as someone else emerged from behind, carrying a small video camera. "What? What are you doing?" The hooded figure shouted, panic in their voice. The newcomer ignored them, placing the camera on a stand and pressing play. A video flickered on the screen, showing Daniel years ago, helping a struggling elderly woman carry groceries, giving his last dollar to a child, assisting a man who had fallen on the sidewalk. Every act of kindness, every gesture of genuine compassion played in front of the silent crowd. The audience's whispers changed to gasps of amazement. "Is that him?" one woman asked. "I didn't know." The hooded figure froze, realizing their plan was collapsing. Daniel's heart pounded, adrenaline surging as he saw the crowd's reactions shift. Even the accuser's face paled, caught off guard by the unexpected proof of Daniel's character. Lucas looked up at his father, eyes wide and shining through tears. "Dad, you really are good." Daniel hugged his son tightly. "Yes, Lucas, I am. And no lie, no secret, no jealous person can ever change that." But just as the tension began to ease, the hooded figure stepped forward once more, voice trembling but determined. "You think this ends here? You haven't seen the worst yet?" Daniel's heart stopped as the figure revealed a page from a third notebook, the handwriting unmistakable, containing a secret from Daniel's past that even he had almost forgotten. One that could change everything in the marketplace forever. Daniel's palms were slick with sweat as he stared at the third notebook, its pages spread wide like a trap he had unknowingly walked into. The marketplace had fallen into a tense hush, all eyes fixed on him. Even Lucas clung to his father's side, trembling, sensing the weight of the moment. The hooded figure's voice cut sharply through the silence. You thought the first two notebooks were enough? Think again. This one. This one tells the story of who Daniel Hayes really is. The truth they've been hiding from you. Daniel's stomach churned. He had faced false accusations, public humiliation, even jealousy-fueled sabotage. But this felt different. The notebook contained something from his past, a secret buried so deep he had almost forgotten it himself. Jonathan Hale stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Daniel's shoulder. Breathe. Take it slow. Whatever's in there, we'll handle it. You can't let fear control you. Lucas whispered, voice quivering. Dad, is it really bad? Daniel bent down, holding his son's small hands in his own. Lucas, sometimes the truth is scary, but we face it, always together. Remember that. He opened the notebook carefully, eyes scanning the first page. It detailed a series of events from years ago, when Daniel was just starting his street vending business. The handwriting was familiar. It was his own, but the context was twisted. Someone had recorded his past in a way that could make him appear deceitful or dishonest. The crowd leaned in, sensing the tension. The hooded figure held the notebook aloft, letting the murmurs grow. Look at this. Daniel Hayes. He lied about his background, about his family, about where he came from. How can we trust a man like this? Daniel's throat tightened. No, this isn't how it happened, he said, voice trembling but controlled. Everything written here, it's misleading. It's been twisted to make me look guilty. A woman in the crowd gasped. I didn't know. The hooded figure smirked, enjoying the growing doubt among the people. And there's more. Hidden debts, past mistakes, personal failures, all exposed. This is the truth about Daniel Hayes. Jonathan's jaw tightened. No, it's not. It's a manipulated narrative. But we'll need proof, Daniel. Facts. Evidence that shows what really happened. Daniel took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had faced public shame before, but this felt like hitting rock bottom again. But now it was deeper. His past, his reputation, and the trust of the community were all at stake. He looked down at Lucas, whose small eyes were filled with fear. Lucas, I need you to be brave. Remember everything we've learned about standing up for the truth. Can you do that for me? Lucas nodded, wiping his tears. Yes, Dad. I'm with you. Daniel's heart swelled with determination. The child's trust, his own integrity, it all depended on how he handled this moment. He cleared his throat, turning toward the crowd. Everyone, I know what you're seeing looks bad. But let me explain the real story. Years ago, yes, I had struggles. Yes, I made mistakes. But I've worked hard, every day to be honest and to help people. The hooded figure scoffed. Words are cheap. Look at the notebooks. They prove everything. Daniel raised a hand, steadying himself. No, look at this differently. This notebook, it's just someone's version of my life. Twisted, incomplete, designed to make me look guilty. But I have witnesses, receipts, and proof of everything I've done to be honest and fair. Gasps spread through the crowd. A few people began whispering, reconsidering their judgments. Jonathan handed Daniel a folder of documents he had kept meticulously over the years. Receipts, thank you notes, photos of Daniel helping customers, records of payments, charitable acts. These will show the real truth, Jonathan said quietly. Daniel held the folder up, turning to the crowd. This is the truth. Every action I've ever taken, documented, honest and transparent. I've never lied about my work, my life, or my past. I've only ever tried to survive and do right by people. The hooded figure's smirk faltered. But what about the secrets? What about the things you've hidden? Daniel's eyes burned with intensity. Those aren't secrets meant to harm anyone. They're just part of growing up, part of learning. I've never hidden anything from the people I serve, from my son, or from anyone who trusts me, and anyone who tries to twist my past to shame me. Well, they'll be exposed for what they truly are. Lucas's small voice rang out, clear and strong. Dad, you're the best dad in the world. You've never done anything wrong. Daniel's chest tightened as he hugged Lucas. Thank you, buddy. That means everything. Some in the crowd were nodding, whispering among themselves. The tide was turning, slowly but unmistakably. People who had doubted Daniel before began seeing the situation differently, realizing the manipulative nature of the hooded figure's act. The accuser, realizing the momentum shifting, stepped forward, desperate. Wait, maybe there's more. What about this? What about that? Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Not this time. The evidence speaks for itself. Daniel opened the folder, showing photos of him helping the elderly woman carry groceries, assisting a child who had fallen, giving food to someone in need. Every kind act was proof, undeniable and compelling. The crowd murmured in awe. I didn't know. He's a good man. The hooded figure's panic grew. This can't be, it's all wrong. But before Daniel could address them further, a new voice rang out from the back of the market. I have the full truth, the voice said. Everyone turned to see a man stepping forward, holding a video tablet. The footage displayed Daniel's struggles, his fights with unfair vendors, his efforts to protect his son, and even moments where he had risked everything to help strangers. The crowd went silent, absorbing the overwhelming evidence of Daniel's character. Even the accuser seemed speechless. Jonathan whispered, Now they'll see who you truly are, Daniel. Daniel's heart raced. He took a deep breath and faced the crowd, his son at his side. The truth is always stronger than lies, and today everyone will see it for themselves. But just as relief began to settle, the hooded figure leaned forward, eyes glinting with determination. You may have survived this, but the notebook contains one more secret, one that could ruin everything you've worked for. Daniel froze, dread washing over him. The hooded figure held the page open, revealing a truth from Daniel's past he had long buried, something that could undo the redemption he had fought so hard to achieve. The sun was dipping behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the marketplace. But Daniel didn't notice. His heart was pounding too loudly, his mind spinning with the revelation from the final notebook page. The crowd's murmurs had faded into a tense silence. All eyes on him, Lucas, and the looming figure who had orchestrated the chaos. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew he had reached the moment where everything could change, either for the better or worse. He looked down at his son, Lucas's small hand clinging to his own, and drew strength from the boy's unwavering trust. Dad, are you going to be okay? Lucas whispered, voice trembling. Daniel forced a smile, though his chest ached. Yes, buddy. We're going to make this right. You'll see, but we need to act carefully. Jonathan Hale stepped beside him, eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of unrest. Daniel, now's your chance. Speak clearly. Show them who you really are. Don't let fear control you. Daniel nodded, taking a deep breath. He opened the notebook slowly, revealing the page the hooded figure had been so eager to expose. The words were a mix of facts and exaggerations. Daniel's early struggles in life, a few poor choices made out of desperation, and moments of embarrassment. The hooded figure's smirk had returned, triumphant. So, Daniel Hayes, ready to admit who you really are, or will you keep hiding behind lies? Daniel's jaw tightened. He could feel the crowd leaning in, their judgmental eyes waiting for him to falter. But something inside shifted. The humiliation, the fear, the relentless pressure, they had all forged him into someone stronger. This page, it doesn't tell the whole story, Daniel began, voice steady and clear. Yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've struggled, but every single one of those moments taught me something valuable. Every challenge pushed me to be better, to work harder and to help others whenever I could. The crowd murmured, some skeptical, some curious. Daniel stepped forward, raising his voice. Do you want the truth? Here it is. I've spent years helping people, protecting children, supporting my family, and giving back to this community in ways that never made the news. Those mistakes on this page, they don't define me. My actions do. And if you'll look closely, you'll see that I've never stopped trying to do the right thing. The hooded figure laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. Words are meaningless, Daniel. Only the notebook matters. Daniel shook his head, his eyes blazing. No, evidence speaks louder than words, and I have proof. Jonathan handed him a small stack of documents, receipts, photos, and letters from people Daniel had helped over the years. He held them high for the crowd to see. Here's the real story. Every act of kindness, every honest moment, every risk taken to protect someone else. This is the truth, not just a page in a notebook. A few spectators gasped, whispering among themselves. I didn't know, one said. He's been helping people all along. Daniel turned to the hooded figure, voice firm. You wanted to expose me, make me look weak, humiliate me in front of everyone I care about. But the truth always comes out. And the truth is that I've lived my life with integrity, even when it was hard, even when nobody noticed. Lucas's eyes shone with tears, but this time they were proud, not fearful. That's my dad, he said softly, loud enough for the people around them to hear. The tide began to shift. Whispers of admiration rippled through the crowd. People who had doubted Daniel's character began to see him in a new light. Even some of the other vendors who had watched silently started nodding, acknowledging the truth they had ignored. The hooded figure's face twisted with frustration. You can't just turn this around. They've already seen the notebooks. Daniel smiled, calm and confident now. They've seen the notebooks, yes, but they've also seen the evidence of who I really am. My actions, my life, and the trust of my son, that's what matters, not someone's attempt to twist my story for personal gain. Jonathan stepped forward, voice low but commanding. The truth is always stronger than lies. Daniel has nothing to hide, and anyone who tries to manipulate the truth will be exposed for what they really are. The hooded figure faltered, sensing the crowd's opinion turning against them. Panic flickered in their eyes. Daniel took a deep breath, looking around at everyone who had gathered. Today could have broken me, humiliated me, and taken everything from me. But it didn't. Why? Because I've always tried to do the right thing, even when it was hard. And because I have people around me, my son, my friends, even strangers, who believe in the power of truth and kindness. The crowd began applauding. Hesitant at first, then louder and louder. People's faces softened, their expressions turning from doubt to admiration. He really is a good man, someone said. Lucas hugged his father tightly. I knew you'd fix it, Dad. Daniel smiled through tears. We fixed it together. Jonathan nodded approvingly. This is the turning point. From here, things can only get better. The hooded figure, realizing their plan had failed, made a last, desperate attempt. You think this ends here? There's more. More people will believe me. Daniel stepped closer, eyes blazing with resolve. No, you tried to use fear and shame to control the story, but it didn't work. The truth is stronger than lies, and anyone who tried to hurt me will see their actions exposed. The figure froze, then slowly lowered the notebook, realizing that the crowd no longer followed them. Murmurs of agreement, support, and admiration. Now Daniel turned to Lucas, squeezing his hand. This was hard, son, but we showed everyone that integrity and courage matter more than fear and gossip. But just as the applause grew, Daniel noticed something that made his heart stop. The hooded figure reached into their coat pocket, pulling out a small envelope, a letter marked with Daniel's name. The figure's eyes gleamed with a dangerous determination. Daniel's pulse raced. Whatever was in that envelope had the power to undo everything he had just proven, and this time it might be a challenge even he couldn't overcome. The marketplace was unusually quiet that morning, the hum of activity replaced by a tense anticipation. Daniel stood at the center, Lucas gripping his hand tightly. The hooded figure had disappeared for now, leaving the envelope behind, but its mere presence lingered like a shadow, reminding Daniel that the fight for truth wasn't over. He glanced at Jonathan Hale, who nodded subtly. "This is it, Daniel. Time to show them who you really are." Daniel took a deep breath. He knew that the next few moments would determine everything, whether the crowd would see him as a fraud or as a man who had overcome impossible odds with integrity. He opened the envelope slowly, careful not to tear the paper inside. It contained a single photograph, one from years ago that could be easily misinterpreted. In it, Daniel was standing beside a group of city officials, holding a box of supplies meant for a charitable drive, but the image had been cropped and angled to suggest he was taking credit for something he hadn't. The hooded figure's smear campaign came rushing back in his mind, but Daniel refused to panic. "Lucas," he whispered, kneeling to meet his son's eyes, "we handle this calmly, always with truth, not anger." Lucas nodded, his small face set with determination. "I'm with you, Dad." The crowd began to murmur as Daniel held the photograph up. Some raised eyebrows, skeptical faces appearing among them. Daniel knew he had to act quickly, or doubt would erode all the goodwill he had fought to regain. "Everyone," he began, voice strong and steady, "I know what you're thinking when you see this photo. You might believe it proves something negative about me, but the truth, the real story, is very different." He reached into his bag and pulled out a series of documents and receipts corresponding to that charitable drive. Volunteers' names, official letters, signed thank-you notes from the families who received the donations, proof of everything. "I was never trying to take credit for something I didn't do," Daniel said, letting his eyes sweep over the crowd. "I was helping organize, delivering what needed to be delivered, and making sure it reached the people who needed it most. Every act was about service, not fame. Every choice was about integrity, not personal gain." Jonathan stepped forward, handing Daniel a tablet loaded with video footage from that same day. The camera followed Daniel's every move, unloading boxes, greeting families, assisting elderly volunteers, even calming a frightened child. The footage left no room for doubt. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. I didn't know he was doing all that," one vendor muttered. Another whispered, "He's been a good man all along." The hooded figure, sensing their influence slipping away, tried to interrupt. "Stop! That doesn't change anything. But Daniel held up his hand, calm yet commanding. "No, it does change everything. Because it proves the truth is stronger than lies, and the truth shows the person I've always been, even when others tried to misrepresent me." He turned to Lucas, kneeling down and embracing his son. "And I want you all to see something else. This little boy has been my greatest teacher. He's reminded me what's important: honesty, courage, and never giving up, even when the world doubts you." Lucas blushed slightly but smiled, holding up his own hand to wave to the crowd. "He's my dad, and he's the best man I know." Tears began to glisten in the eyes of people who had once questioned Daniel's character. They could see, through his actions and the evidence, that he was a man of integrity, courage, and compassion. The hooded figure's desperation became palpable. They stepped forward one last time, holding a phone that showed another doctored image, an attempt to twist Daniel's past once more. But before they could speak, Jonathan Hale stepped in, voice calm but unwavering. "Enough. Jonathan said. "The evidence has been presented. The videos, the documents, the testimonials, they all prove Daniel's true character. Any attempts to distort the past are irrelevant now." The figure froze, realizing that their plan had failed. Slowly they lowered the phone, the smirk fading from their face. Daniel took a deep breath, addressing the crowd one final time. "Life isn't perfect. We all make mistakes. But what defines us is how we respond. Do we hide, do we lie, or do we act with honesty, courage, and compassion? I've chosen the latter every single day, and I'll continue to do so, because the people I care about, the people who trust me, deserve nothing less." Applause began quietly at first, then louder, swelling into a chorus of approval and admiration. Some vendors stepped forward, shaking Daniel's hand, offering words of support. Families who had received his help in the past shared their gratitude. Even strangers who had only watched from the sidelines were moved by his integrity. Lucas's eyes shone with pride. "See, Dad, you didn't just survive. You showed everyone who you really are." Daniel hugged him tightly. "We did it together, buddy. We proved that truth and kindness always win in the end." Jonathan smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. "This is your redemption, Daniel. You've faced falsehoods, humiliation, and fear, and now the world sees your true character." As the crowd continued applauding, the hooded figure slipped away, defeated but still a lingering threat. Daniel knew they might return, but for now, the victory was his. The marketplace, once filled with doubt and tension, now resonated with support, trust and respect for the man who had stood his ground. But as Daniel looked down at Lucas, a pang of concern struck him. He noticed a small envelope tucked under Lucas's arm, one he hadn't seen before. The handwriting was familiar, Jonathan's. Daniel opened it cautiously, revealing a note. "Daniel," it read, "there's one last step before full justice can be achieved. Someone you least expect holds the key to resolving this permanently. Be careful and trust wisely." Daniel's chest tightened. He realized the journey wasn't completely over. There was still one final choice, one final action that would determine whether his redemption was complete or if shadows from the past could still strike. As Daniel folded the note, a figure emerged from the crowd, someone he never thought would be involved in his story. Their eyes met his, and Daniel felt a mix of hope and apprehension, knowing the next moment could change everything. Forever. The morning sun spilled golden light across the marketplace, illuminating faces that had once doubted Daniel Hayes. Today, it was different. Today, the air was thick with anticipation, hope, and a sense that something monumental was about to unfold. Daniel adjusted his jacket nervously, feeling Lucas's small hand squeeze his. The boy's eyes shone with excitement and trust, reminding Daniel why he had fought so hard through humiliation, lies, and betrayal. Jonathan Hale stood nearby, calm and steady, observing the crowd that had gathered. Vendors, families, and even strangers, all eyes were on Daniel. The hooded figure, once a looming threat, had vanished after their failed attempts to discredit him, leaving only a lingering shadow. But Daniel knew redemption was more than surviving humiliation. It was proving the strength of character in the face of adversity. Daniel inhaled deeply, glancing at the envelope Jonathan had given him in Chapter 11. It had hinted at a final step, someone who could resolve the last challenge and cement the truth for everyone. His heart pounded as he scanned the crowd, searching for a familiar figure. Then he saw her. Sarah, a local journalist who had once written scathing pieces about him without knowing the full story, was stepping forward. Her expression was a mixture of respect, apology, and uncertainty. She held a recorder and a notebook, ready to document the truth she had missed for so long. Daniel swallowed hard, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief. This was the moment he had been waiting for, an opportunity to finally clear his name completely and leave a legacy of integrity and hope. "Daniel Hayes," Sarah began, her voice clear over the soft murmur of the crowd, "I once doubted you. I once wrote stories that painted you in the worst light possible. But today, after seeing everything, the evidence, the videos, the testimonials, and the way you've handled all of this, I realize I was wrong. I want to set the record straight." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He nodded, steadying himself. "Thank you, Sarah. That means more than you know. But the truth isn't just about correcting stories. It's about showing people that integrity, kindness, and courage are what truly define a person." Sarah smiled, taking a step closer. "And that's exactly what I want to share with everyone. The real story of Daniel Hayes, a man who faced false accusations, humiliation, and even danger, yet never lost his values. Today, people need to know the truth." Jonathan Hale stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "Let this be a lesson for all of us. We are quick to judge based on fragments, rumors, or manipulated images. But the full story, the truth, is always stronger than lies. Daniel Hayes has proven that courage and honesty can overcome even the darkest attempts to destroy someone's reputation." The crowd began to nod, murmuring their agreement. Faces softened, some even showing tears. Those who had once doubted Daniel now looked at him with admiration. Vendors who had whispered judgments now stepped forward, offering handshakes, words of support, and genuine acknowledgement of his character. Daniel took Lucas's hand again, lifting him slightly onto his shoulder. "Look around you, son," he said gently. "This is what happens when you never give up, when you always choose the right path, even when it's hard. These people aren't just supporting me. They're believing in the truth, in integrity, in what's right." Lucas smiled, eyes shining. "I knew you'd make things right, Dad. You never gave up, and that's why they see the real you." Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt the weight of every insult, every smear, every moment of doubt lift from his shoulders. The journey hadn't been easy. The humiliation had cut deep. But today, the world was seeing him for who he truly was, not through the lens of deception, but through the clarity of truth. Sarah stepped forward again, holding her notebook high. "And for the record," she said, voice strong, "Daniel Hayes has spent years helping this community, supporting children and families, and showing extraordinary courage under pressure. No notebook, no rumor, and no smear campaign can erase a lifetime of integrity." The crowd erupted into applause, cheers, and even a few tears. People shouted words of encouragement. "We believe you, Daniel. Thank you for showing us what's right." Vendors and community members began embracing him, shaking his hand, and offering heartfelt apologies for any past misjudgments. Daniel looked around, taking in the scene. He spotted the hooded figure lurking at the edge of the crowd, now shrinking back, powerless to undo what had been proven. The figure's attempts to humiliate and manipulate had failed completely. The truth had triumphed, and the crowd's support was absolute. Jonathan Hale placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You've earned this moment, Daniel. You've faced the worst, and now the world sees the hero you've always been, not just for yourself, but for your son, for the community, and for everyone who believed in justice." Daniel knelt down, hugging Lucas tightly. "We did it together, son, and remember, this isn't just about me. It's about showing that even when the odds are against you, even when lies and cruelty seem to dominate, standing firm in truth and kindness will always win in the end." Lucas leaned into his father. "I know, Dad. I'll always remember that." Daniel rose, looking out over the marketplace, the sun casting warm light over the faces of people who had once doubted him, but now cheered his name. The transformation was complete. Humiliation had turned into respect, fear into admiration, and doubt into belief. Finally, Daniel turned to the hooded figure, who now seemed small and defeated at the edge of the crowd. "Let this be a lesson," he said calmly. "Trying to bring others down will never work if they stand firm in truth. Integrity cannot be bought, borrowed, or stolen. It comes from the heart, and today my heart has spoken louder than any lies." The hooded figure backed away silently, the power of Daniel's words and the crowd's support leaving them powerless. Daniel walked through the marketplace, shaking hands, embracing friends, and acknowledging those who had supported him. Every gesture, every word, reinforced the lesson he had lived through all these trials. He finally paused, looking at Lucas, his son's eyes reflecting pride and hope. "Sometimes the poorest hearts carry the richest souls," Daniel whispered. "And sometimes the simplest acts of courage can change everything." Lucas smiled, hugging him tightly. "I'm proud of you, Dad. You showed everyone what it means to be strong, kind, and brave." Daniel felt a warmth spread through him, a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long, painful, and filled with challenges, but every trial had led to this moment, a moment of truth, redemption, and hope. As the crowd began to disperse, cheering and talking about the day's events, Daniel held Lucas close, knowing that their bond, forged through trials and courage, was unbreakable. Jonathan Hale approached, smiling. "This is your story now, Daniel. The story of a man who never gave up, who faced every challenge with integrity, and who reminded the world what it means to be human." Daniel nodded, taking a deep breath. "And I hope it inspires others to never stop standing up for what's right, even when it seems impossible. Truth, kindness, and courage will always prevail." The marketplace, once a place of tension and whispers, now echoed with hope, admiration, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Daniel, Lucas, and Jonathan walked through it together, leaving behind fear, humiliation, and doubt. And somewhere in the distance, the sun rose higher, casting a golden light on a world reminded that even the smallest hearts, when courageous, can leave the largest impact.